At the bank, my son told the manager, "Transfer everything to me now, he's done," smirking at the teller. But when the manager asked for secondary password, only I answered. His plan died. If you're reading this, tell me where you're reading from. I want to know how far a story can travel when it begins with a quiet man and a louder son, standing under the cold lights of a bank lobby. The floor was polished so bright I could see the ceiling in it. The glass doors breathed people in and out, a soft hiss each time, like the building itself didn't want to hear what my boy was saying. My son leaned an elbow on the counter, made himself look bigger than he is, and told the manager, "Transfer everything to me now, he's done." He didn't glance back. He didn't need to. He thought he had already won. The teller, a young woman with a careful smile and nervous eyes, flicked her gaze to me, as if checking whether I had enough oxygen. I had plenty. I kept my hands folded over the head of my cane. I didn't need the cane to stand. I needed it to remember my pace. The manager, a lean man with a tie the color of wet steel, took a breath, nodded as if this was an order he received every day, and asked for account numbers, signatures, and his words, the secondary password. The word floated above the counter like a moth. My son's smirk twitched. He didn't expect that question to have sharp teeth. I let the silence hang. You learn a lot in silence. You learn who can swim without splashing. I had known this day might come. Children test walls, grown sons test borders. He had swaggered all morning, whispering with his wife near the door, the two of them clothed in new perfume and new certainty. On the ride over, he sat in the back seat though I offered him the front. He liked looking at me through the mirror, like he was checking the distance in case he needed to accelerate past me. "It'll be quick," he said, tapping at his phone. "We're just moving things into one place." He meant into his hands. He meant I was the past. And the past belongs in albums, not in banks. I watched trees flicker by, each one holding the same sun in its leaves. I nodded as if I hadn't already packed the truth in a quiet part of my chest, as if I hadn't spent years building locks he couldn't see, not to trap him, to keep us both honest. Inside the branch, the air smelled like paper and ink and something faintly sweet, like the mints they kept in a small glass bowl by the door for customers who had done something foolish and needed to feel better. He walked ahead, straight to the counter, and used my name like a card he could play. "We're here to handle my father's accounts." My father. He said the words the way some people say, "my car," or "my view." The teller glanced at my face. She must have seen something there because she lowered her eyes, the way you would when watching a storm form far off at sea. She called for the manager. He came out like he'd been expecting a new kind of problem, sleeves neat, pen in his hand like a small spear. My son didn't waste time with courtesy. "Transfer everything," he said, putting his palm on the counter, flattening it as if pressing down a map. "All assets, all balances, he's finished. I'll take it from here." People nearby turned slightly, pretending not to listen. A man in a gray suit stopped counting deposit slips. A grandmother adjusted her shawl and found a reason to stand closer to the rope barrier. A small boy with a bright red car in his fist watched my cane like it might become a wand. I looked at my son, at the new watch on his wrist. He had begged for a watch when he was 5. He wanted one that glowed blue in the dark. I got it for his 7th birthday after saving tips for months. He slept with it on, left a faint circle on his skin. Now he wore a watch that glowed in every room and didn't know how to tell time that mattered. "Of course," the manager said, the way people say "of course" to test a door before deciding whether it's locked. "We can discuss any changes you'd like. I'll need identification, proof of authority, and the secondary password on the primary accounts." His eyes shifted to me, then back to my son. The teller's finger hovered above her keyboard, waiting for a word that would allow her to type. My son shifted his weight. He had rehearsed papers, not passwords. He cleared his throat. He looked at me and then away, quick as a cough. "We have durable power of attorney," he said, and handed a folder across the counter like a magician presenting a dove. The manager glanced through the papers, nodding with polite interest, then placed them gently to one side, like setting a glass down without spilling. "Thank you," he said. "And the secondary password?" The word secondary pressed against his ears. It sounded small, but it held the room. The teller looked at me again. I watched the second hand crawl around the manager's wrist. I counted 3 beats. 4. I kept my voice calm and low because rage shouts and power doesn't need to. I spoke the password. The room exhaled. It wasn't a secret word. It was a word chosen years ago, a word that tasted like home when said right. He didn't know it. He didn't know why I chose it either. That mattered more. He flinched. A small thing, but I saw it. My son is tall, but height doesn't help when you're surprised. He laughed a little to show he wasn't worried. "Yeah, the password," he said, pointing to his own head. "I've got it." I just let him say it because, you know. He waved his hand like my voice was a courtesy, like opening a door for an old man who still insists on walking. The manager didn't smile. He typed. He was careful with his keys. A man who knows letters can be doors or traps. "Thank you, sir," he said to me, and in that "sir" there was a small fence, the kind that keeps lambs safe and wolves honest. Perhaps you think I was trembling. I wasn't. I had already done my trembling in the doorway of a hospital room years ago, when the heart monitor drew a flat line and the smell of antiseptic filled every corner of my memory. My wife's hands were cool by then. I warmed them with mine, but you can't argue with winter. Since that day, I learned how to hold a storm without spilling it on the floor. I carry it behind my ribs like a hot coal. It keeps me upright. It keeps me kind. It reminds me that anger is loud, but grief is a teacher who whispers the right answers when you're ready to listen. The manager asked a few more questions. Routine, he called them. I answered in steady syllables. My son answered in bursts, trying to sound like the owner of a stage he hadn't built. He told the teller to be quick. He told the manager to stop wasting time. He reminded them he was family. The teller's careful smile didn't move. The manager clicked through screens, each click a small drumbeat marching toward a truth my son hadn't prepared for. I let him talk himself into a corner. He'd been doing it for months, but corners feel different with cameras watching. You want to know how a son gets this far from the man who raised him? I'll tell you, because stories are only worth the telling if you walk through every room of the house, not just the clean ones. There was a time when he lay on my chest and slept like a little planet finding its orbit. When he was 3, he fell on the front steps and his knee bled a fierce red, and I carried him inside like a soldier carrying a flag. My wife made a paste of turmeric and honey and kissed the top of his head with the same mouth she used to scold me about cholesterol. We ate mango slices in the courtyard, sticky and laughing, and the wind rattled the neem leaves like coins in a jar. He called me Baba, then dragged the last syllable into a song. He was generous with his hugs. He was small and thought the world was a door I'd already opened for him, and I wanted him to think so. That was my mistake and my love. I worked double shifts to keep our mortgage honest. I wore the same shirt longer than a man should, because school fees grow even when your salary doesn't. On nights when the factory air burned my throat, I told myself it was the price of his new shoes, his textbooks, his science fair project, an exploded diagram of a heart made from cardboard and glue. He stood on stage, his hands shaking, and told the audience how the aorta carries blood away and the vena cava brings it back. He pointed to blue arrows and red arrows, and I heard my wife's proud sigh like a wind chime in summer. After the show, he ate ice cream too fast and got a headache. He pressed his fingers to his temples and laughed through the pain, like a warrior who knows victory stings too. That night, we fell asleep with the window open, and the moon came to sit with us for a while. There were harder seasons. My wife's cough became a calendar. The appointments at the hospital were a different kind of shift work. I learned the names of medicines and the price of every hour. I learned how to fold a shawl as if I were folding prayer. She said, "Save for our son's future." She said it gently, like she knew I already was, but she wanted the words to be a bridge between us when the river rose. I did as she asked. I did more. I hid nothing from her. I hid everything from everyone else, not to hoard, to protect the shape of the life we had promised. When we buried her, the sky was rude and blue. People said kind things, the way people do when hard work is over and the harder work begins. I stood at the gate as guests left. Some squeezed my shoulder, some avoided my eyes, as if grief was catching. My son cried into my shirt, salt and hot breath soaking the cloth. That night, he fell asleep on the couch, and I sat on the floor beside him, one hand on his ankle, the way you steady a ladder when someone is high up and cleaning a window. We went on, as people do. He grew taller. His voice cracked and then settled. He began to collect opinions like shiny stones. Some were sharp. I didn't mind. Sharp stones can build strong walls if you place them right. He took a job. He left the job. He found friends who laughed at the same jokes and owed the same people money. He learned the science of appearing rich. He leased a car and called it an investment. He posted pictures of dinners he did not pay for. He said phrases like, "That's your generation's thing," and "We do it differently now." He was not wrong. Different is not a crime. But somewhere between different and disrespect, a bridge collapsed. I heard the creak but couldn't find the crack. Or maybe I didn't want to. The bank's air conditioning hummed like a steady sermon. The manager finished his first round of checks and looked up. "To proceed," he said, "we'll need the account holder's confirmation in person for any major transfers unless we're acting under very specific circumstances." He said the phrase "account holder" clearly, as if he was labeling the door everyone kept pretending wasn't there. My son's jaw worked. He glanced at the cameras. He searched the faces in the lobby, looking for an audience that would clap for him. He found none. He leaned toward the glass, tapping the counter in a slow rhythm. "He's not thinking straight," he said, and laughed again, a sound with no joy in it. "Just move it. It's family business." Family business. The words are heavy when you carry them alone. I stepped half a pace forward so my voice would be caught by the microphone on the counter and recorded into whatever history these places keep. "I'm thinking very straight," I said, flat, not loud, a clean line drawn once. "And I will decide what moves and what stays." The teller's shoulders softened just a little, like a bird tucking its head under a wing in brief relief. The manager nodded like a conductor, acknowledging a violin that came in on time. You may think this was the moment I raised my voice or struck my cane or announced a grand secret. Not today, not yet. A slow knife teaches better than a blunt shout. I let him feel the shape of the room without the furniture he expected. I let him walk a few steps into his confidence and then trip on the rug he didn't notice. I answered every question the manager asked. Dates, institutions, the layout of accounts, the reason for the secondary password and when it was last changed. I gave him the truth because the truth is a ladder you can climb out of any hole with, even the ones your children dig. My son tried stories. "He promised me," he said. "He said it was all for me." He searched my face, hoping to find a lie he could borrow. I gave him my eyes the way a mountain gives a climber its stone, firm and old and not moving for anyone. "I promised to raise you," I said. "I did that. Money doesn't raise a man. Work does, love does, respect does." He rolled his eyes. He has a way of rolling them that used to make his mother laugh. She called it his stormy weather. I felt the ghost of her laugh beside me, soft, reminding me to keep my voice level. Not anger, something colder, something fair. The manager excused himself to confirm some details. He took the folder my son had presented so proudly and walked to a door behind the counter, the kind that looks like wallpaper until it opens. The teller offered water. I accepted. My son refused and then, a beat later, asked for it anyway. He didn't drink it. He held it like a prop. A man behind us coughed. The grandmother in the shawl pretended to study a poster about savings accounts, but her eyes kept jumping to us. The small boy made engine noises with his red car against the rope barrier and looked up at me like I might make a barrier disappear if he asked nicely. I thought about the first time I brought my wife to a bank. We were young and clean and scared. We held hands so tight the teller must have seen 2 bracelets made of bone. We opened a joint account with the excitement of children being given a key to a library. We walked out with a booklet and a promise. She said, "We will fill this with small things, and someday it will be big." She was right. We filled it with very small things. Coins, patience, skipped desserts, repaired shoes instead of new ones, laughter that made a hard day softer around the edges. We filled it with faith. You can't deposit faith on paper, but it draws interest in the soul. I looked at my son's hands. Clean, software. Not a crime. A man has the right to soft hands if he's held soft things right, like a baby's neck, a scared friend's secret, a truth that didn't want to be spoken. But my son's softness had a different look. It was the softness of not carrying, not lifting, not staying when the hard job starts. I loved him anyway. Love is not a wage. It does not depend on hours worked. It is a name you whisper to yourself when you don't have a better word for why you wake up and try again. The manager returned. He laid the folder down with the care of a man placing a sleeping child in a cot. "Thank you for your patience," he said. He looked at me, then at my son, then back to me. "We'll need the account holder's verbal consent for any movement of everything." He didn't stress the word. He didn't need to. Its weight was obvious. My son opened his mouth. I didn't look at him. I looked at the pen in the manager's hand. I looked at the small digital clock on the wall that had been 5 minutes fast since the last time I visited. I looked at the cameras, black little eyes watching, patient and mechanical. I nodded once, and then, before any more words could try to strangle the moment, I breathed in and let a memory walk through me like a quiet guest. My wife, on a winter night, tying her shawl, telling me we had done well with little and would do better with more, but not at the price of the boy's soul. Her fingers were thin even then. Her rings twisted just a little when she chopped coriander for soup. She smiled at me over the steam and said, "Save for him, but don't save him from himself." It didn't make sense to me then. It does now. In the hush of the bank, with the air humming and the world pressing its nose against the glass, it made a clean and terrible sense. So, I stood there, calm, a coal glowing under ribs, and said the sentence that kept the day honest. "No transfer today." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The words landed and stayed where they were placed. If you're still with me, tell me where you're reading from. Tell me whether the light in your room is soft or harsh, whether the air smells of ink or rain. Because this is not just my story. It's the story of rooms like this around the world, where fathers stand without raising their hands, where sons learn that power is in volume, and where the quiet word of a man who has paid every bill is louder than any smirk at any counter. And this was only the beginning. The words, "no transfer today," sat between us like a small stone, and he tried to kick it out of the way the only way he knows, by getting louder. He laughed too big for the room, a sound meant to tell everyone this was a joke, and he was still in charge. "He's confused," he told the manager, flicking a glance at me like I was a lamp that had started to flicker. "He says things like that. He doesn't mean it. Just do the transfer. We have places to be." His wife stood a step back, her perfume drawing a soft line in the air, her mouth a careful bow. She leaned toward him, as if to pour courage into his ear. "Stay firm," she whispered, and I saw the word firm bounce around inside him, looking for a place to land. The manager did not move any faster. If anything, he slowed down. A man who understands that rushing is how mistakes get born. "I understand," he said in a voice that had been trained to carry no sharp edges. "But we must follow procedure." My son tapped the counter. He used the flat of his hand first, then 2 fingers, then 1, as if he were playing a tune only he could hear. "Listen," he said, and tried to smile at the teller. "We're family. It's our money. He saved it for me. He told me that." The teller kept her eyes on the screen. She could see him in the reflection anyway. "We cannot move funds without the account holder's clear consent," she said, reading from rules that had saved many people from themselves. He exhaled through his nose. It fogged a little circle on the glass. I felt the room's attention shift, quiet and real. People say they mind their own business, but they don't. Not when it comes to family, not when it comes to money, not when it comes to a son trying to rob a father with soft words and hard hands. A man at the deposit table pretended to scratch his neck and turned his head just enough to see. The grandmother loosened her shawl and folded it again, slower, like time had stretched. The boy with the red car pushed it across the floor and said, "Vroom," softer now, as if engines also understand embarrassment. My son tried a different door. He lifted his chin and said to the manager, "Maybe you didn't understand the scope. I'm not asking to move a few bills around. I'm moving everything. Investments, fixed deposits, the villa account, the safe deposit box access, everything. We need it consolidated, today." He looked down at me like a king inspecting a pawn. "We're buying property," he added, and glanced at his wife. She smiled like a photograph. "In my name," he finished, and there it was. The word he loved most in the world, my. My name, my car, my brand, my future, my father. I could have answered each claim as it came. I could have told him which properties were paid off and which were still working, like fields that don't yield until winter. I could have told him why we never trusted a single basket with all our eggs, and how the cracks in a basket don't show until you've already broken your breakfast. I could have told him many things. Instead, I let the room do the talking, the hum of the air conditioner, the quiet click of the manager's mouse, the soft scratch of the teller's nail against plastic keys. I let him hear, maybe for the first time, that the world does not bend just because he has decided to lean. "Sir," the manager said to me, "to confirm once more, you do not approve a transfer of funds today?" I looked at the small digital clock that still ran 5 minutes fast and thought how some errors remain faithful even when people do not. "I do not approve any transfer," I said. "Not today." I didn't look at my son when I said it. I looked at the pen in the manager's hand and remembered the day I bought a single pen for my boy from a street stall because he wanted one with a tiny rocket inside. He pressed the clip and the rocket moved up and down. He spent a week doing homework that didn't need doing just so he could press that clip. If I had known then that one day he would try to press me the same way, would I have said no to the pen? Number, love is not a training ground for control. It is a training ground for patience. His wife stepped forward now, her voice smooth. "We have legal documents," she said, and slid the same folder closer to the manager, as if proximity would give the papers new power. "Durable power of attorney, see?" He signed. Her fingernails were painted a brave color, the kind that wanted to be seen even in a storm. The manager opened the folder again. He did not look rushed. He glanced at a page, then at another, then nodded to himself as if he were reading a story, whose ending he already knew. "These documents," he said, "authorize assistance in certain circumstances. They do not override the account holder's active instructions in person. We must have his consent." He placed the folder back on the counter, a small hill of paper that had failed to change the weather. My son's smile failed first, then his patience. "You don't understand," he said to the manager, but he was looking at me. "He promised. He said it's all for me. He's just making a scene." He touched the glass barrier with an open hand, a gesture I had seen when he was 10, and the toy he wanted was behind a window. That day I told him we could not buy it. He cried for 30 minutes and then fell asleep with a hiccup. When he woke, he hugged me without asking for the toy again. Some lessons stick for a day. Some do not stick at all. "Do you want to proceed with any changes today?" the manager asked me. It was a fair question, the kind you ask a man who has walked a long way to say a single sentence. I met his eyes. He was not unkind. He was not on anyone's side. He was on the side of rules, and sometimes rules are the only friends left in a room like this. "No changes," I said. "I'd like to check the safe deposit access log, please." My son jerked a little at that, like I had tugged an invisible string tied to his collar. "Why?" he said too quickly. "Why do you need to check that?" His wife's eyes flashed for the briefest second. Fear travels faster than light when it knows the route. "Routine," I said. "I like to know who visits what belongs to me." My voice was a lake in winter. Under the ice, the water still moved. He opened his mouth, then shut it, then turned to the manager. "You can't show him that," he said, and then realized how foolish it sounded. The manager straightened a stack of forms, a small ritual of order. "We can show the account holder his own access log," he said gently. "Of course." While he went to print it, my son decided to shift the field. "Fine," he said, stepping closer to me. "If you won't move it, I'll move you. Pack your things. The villa is mine. You're leaving by the end of the week." He smiled like a wolf that had found an unlocked gate. "It's better for you anyway. Less stress, less responsibility." His wife nodded quickly, eager to look kind while pushing. "You'll be more comfortable somewhere smaller," she added. "Closer to your friends." I almost asked her to name one of my friends. I almost asked my son to name one of my medicines. I didn't. Some questions are not for asking. They are for keeping in your pocket as proof. "You have a copy of the deed?" I asked, and my calm must have sounded like mockery to him. He bristled. "I don't need a copy," he said. "It's understood." He talked like a man who builds houses out of the word understood and is surprised when the rain comes in. "We'll change the locks," he added, his voice growing excited now, as if he had just remembered a trick. The grandmother made a soft sound, the kind of sound women make when they see a boy about to fall from a tree. He climbed to impress people who were not looking. The boy with the red car stopped moving it and looked up, the rubber tires quiet on tile. "You will not change any locks," I said, and there was a little click in the sentence, like a bolt sliding home. He laughed again, but it wobbled. "We'll see," he said. "We'll see what the law says." He had started carrying the law in his mouth like a candy he could unwrap when needed. He didn't know its taste. He only liked the sound of the word. I thought of his first day at school. He had worn a too big backpack and tripped twice on the stairs because he refused to hold the railing. He wanted to be brave. He wanted to be big. I let him fall. I picked him up. That is what fathers do when they can. Today I could not pick him up. Today he had to taste the floor himself. The manager returned with a thin strip of paper warm from the printer. He handed it to me, not to my son. I read it slowly. I traced dates and times with my finger. There it was, a morning 2 weeks ago when I was at the clinic for a checkup, a time when my keys were with the maid and the maid was at the market. Access requested, access denied. Someone had tried the box, not with my permission, not with my presence. The record didn't say who. It didn't need to. I looked up and found my son already looking away. His wife's face had turned still, like a pond that has swallowed a stone and is trying to pretend it did not happen. "You tried to open it," I said. Not a question. "You tried when I was not there." He lifted his chin again. "It's our family's box," he said. I needed to know what was inside. He was honest in that second, the way people are honest when lying has stopped working. I nodded once, as if I were noting. The weather in a small book. "Curiosity is a young man's excuse," I said. "Greed is an older one." He flushed. He hates the word greed. He prefers words like opportunity, strategy, vision. Men who love shortcuts rename every street. "Sir," the manager said, careful with timing, "would you like to set any additional restrictions on safe deposit access?" I folded the printout, tucked it into my pocket, and nodded. "Yes," I said. "Effective immediately. Access remains only with me. Any attempt to add names will require my physical presence and a video confirmation." He noted it, his pen making a neat sound against the form. My son snorted. "You won't always be able to come down here," he said. "You're getting old." He said it like a threat. I smiled a little. "That is the plan," I said. "To get older. I hope you manage it too." He blinked. He does not understand slow weapons. He does not understand quiet wins. He understands receipts and photographs and applause. He understands posts and payments and the glow of screens. He has not yet learned about time, the only currency that shows its value after you've already spent it. I thought of my wife again. She used to fold laundry on the back veranda and say, "A good life is slow and steady, like drying clothes in the sun. If you rush, everything stays damp and smells of mildew." I did not tell him that line. He would have rolled his eyes. I told it to myself instead, the way you press a handkerchief to a cut and keep walking. Outside, a horn sounded twice, impatient. Inside, the air felt like the moment before rain. My son switched tactics again. "Look," he said to me, keeping his voice low now. "Just do this, and I'll take care of you. I'll make sure you have everything. I'll manage your appointments. I'll handle the bills. You won't have to think." He said it like a promise, like a reward. He said it like he was offering me a seat on a boat I had built with my own hands. "You'll live with us," his wife added quickly, and I could hear the rooms in her voice. The guest room turned into a storage space, the schedule that fits everyone except the person who paid for the walls. I pictured my shoes lined under a bed, in a house that did not say my name when the door opened. I pictured my books boxed, because they didn't match the decor. I pictured my wife's shawl folded in a drawer that smelled of someone else's perfume. I pictured myself becoming a shadow that asked for permission to make tea. "I have a home," I said. "I like my own tea." He rolled his eyes again, but they were not as sure as before. "You're making this difficult," he said. "You're being stubborn for no reason. You're pushing me away." "I am standing where I have always stood," I said. "You were the one charging." He shook his head, forced a laugh, looked at the teller as if she might help him. She did not. She was watching the screen. Perhaps she was thinking of her own father. Perhaps she was thinking of her own son. Everyone in the room was thinking of someone, even the boy with the red car. He had started driving it in smaller circles now, as if roads had narrowed. The manager cleared his throat softly. "If there is nothing else," he said, "we can conclude today's visit." There was more, of course. There was always more. But not to be said here, not with this audience, not with cameras and a microphone and a thin strip of paper cooling in my pocket. "There is one more thing," I said, and my son straightened, like a dog who hears the can opener. I want to update secondary verifications, I continued. The manager nodded. We can do that, he said. We'll step into the verification booth. He gestured to a small room with frosted glass and a chair that looked like it had been borrowed from a dentist. My son moved to follow. The manager raised a hand politely. Only the account holder, he said. My son stopped. His laugh stayed in his throat and turned into something else. In the small room, the light was softer. The glass smelled of cleaning spray. The chair creaked when I sat, as if it had a memory of every person who had sat and decided to defend their life. The manager ran through questions: my mother's maiden name, my first pet, the city where I was married. I answered. Then he asked me to choose a new secondary phrase. I chose a sentence, not a word, not a date. A sentence that only I would say the way I say it. He looked surprised and then pleased. That will do, he said. We recorded it, my voice steady, my breath slow. I imagined my wife listening and nodding once, the way she did when I finally understood something she had tried to teach me for years. When I stepped back out, the room seemed to sit up a little, like a crowd sensing the final act. My son tried to read my face, looking for doors, windows, cracks. He found none. We're done here, I said. We're going home. Our home, he said instantly, eager to claim. The villa. My home, I said, and let the words sit there, simple and true. And you will come as a guest if you come at all. His mouth opened and closed. He was unused to doors that swung toward him. He walked beside me to the exit, speaking fast, throwing words like pebbles at a train already moving. You're going to regret this, he said. People will think you're cruel. They'll say you abandoned your son. I pushed the glass door. The afternoon heat reached in like a friend who hadn't visited in a while. Let them say what they want, I said. People always do. Behind us, the teller's careful smile returned to neutral. The manager wrote one last note and slid the folder away. The grandmother touched my elbow as I passed and said, very softly, "Bless you." The boy with the red car lifted it up to show me. I nodded at him, then at the car, then at his mother, who looked tired and proud in the way good mothers do. Outside, the sun threw coins of light on the hoods of parked cars. My son followed me to the curb. This isn't over, he said, and I believed him. He had energy. He had anger. He had an idea of himself that did not include losing. No, I said, it isn't. He waited for me to make the next move. I did not. I let the silence stand between us like a thin wall he could walk around if he learned how to use the door. He did not walk around. He called a car on his phone with fast fingers. We'll talk tonight, he said. At dinner, be ready. He spoke like an invitation was a summons. I watched the ride icon on his screen get closer. I watched his wife's face pale beneath the makeup as she avoided my eyes. I watched a small bird land on the bank's sign and then lift off again. It had no account inside, no safe deposit box, no signature on file. It had flight. That was enough. In the back seat of my own car, I let my cane rest across my knees and closed my eyes for a moment, not to sleep, to see better. The day had shifted. The battle lines were clearer. He would try again. He would bring more words, more papers, more people. He would raise voices and hands. He would call uncles. He would summon the old debts, the old photographs, the old promises, and wave them like flags. Maybe he would call the wife's parents. They never liked the way we lived small and steady. They liked big doors and big rooms and a big show of respect paid in cash. I could hear their voices in his mouth already. He's old. Take control. It's time. I breathed, in, outside. The city moved around me, old and patient. A hawker shouted the price of mangoes. A motorbike coughed. A bus sighed at a stop. Somewhere far away, a call to prayer began. Soft, then strong, waves of sound folding over the noise and cleaning it. I opened my eyes and looked at my hands. They are not soft. They are not cruel. They have carried bricks and babies, paperwork and pillows, responsibility and grief. They have learned to open slowly and close firmly. They have built a life. They will defend it. As we pulled away, I caught sight of my son in the rearview mirror, standing on the sidewalk with his wife, the wind tugging at his shirt. He looked smaller from this distance, Most things do when you place them where they belong. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel broken. I felt ready. Not for a fight with fists or angry words, but for a different kind of fight. The kind you win by knowing more than the other person thinks you know, by holding proof when they are holding pride, by smiling softly when they expect you to shout. I had not brought my secrets to the bank. I had brought only the part of the truth that fit in their rules. The rest waited where it always had, safe as a seed under soil, patient, certain of its season. At home, the gate swung open the way it always does, metal singing against I metal. The bougainvillea leaned over the wall like an aunt gossiping with the street. The tiles in the entry were cool, and the house smelled faintly of cumin from the lunch the maid had cooked and covered for me. I stood in the center of the living room and listened. Houses speak if you let them. This one said, "We remember who paid for us. We remember laughter and rain, and sick nights, and exam mornings, and small arguments that never became big, and the rustle of a shawl, and the sound of a pen scratching across a deed, when a younger man promised a younger woman that this would be theirs." I walked to the cupboard where I keep the safe. I didn't open it. Not yet. I placed my hand on the wood and felt the grain under my palm, lines like a map to all the places we had been without leaving home. The phone rang, his name on the screen. I let it ring, then picked up on the last chime. "Dinner," he said. "8, we're talking then." "We will talk," I said. "Yes." "And we'll fix this," he added, his voice clipped and certain. "We'll fix everything." "Some things are not broken," I said, and ended the call before he could answer. The clock on the wall ticked, the room breathed, the coal under my ribs glowed steady, not hungry now, just sure. I sat at the table where I once taught him to add and subtract with dried beans in a bowl. I remembered how he liked to hold the beans, how he lined them up and named them soldiers, how he made them fight and then pretended to cry for the ones that fell. I picked up a bean from the jar I still keep in the kitchen for soup days and set it on the table, a small brown oval with a lighter seam down the middle. A simple thing, a humble thing, and a reminder. Numbers are not love, but they can tell the truth about it. Tonight we would talk, tomorrow we would see. For now, I let the house keep me. For now, I let the quiet build a foundation under the next step. At 7:30, I boiled rice and kept it covered, the way my wife taught me. Let it rest and become itself before you lift the lid. I cut a lemon and left the halves on a plate because he always liked to squeeze too much and make a face at the sourness. I set one extra chair without thinking and then moved it back, and the room felt that shift the way a body does when a muscle remembers an old injury. At 7:50, the doorbell rang 3 times in a rhythm that wasn't ours. I opened the door to my son, his wife, and her parents, all of them wrapped in evening confidence. He stepped in without waiting to be welcomed and kissed the air near my cheek, as if he were greeting a client. His wife's mother carried a small box of sweets and handed it to me like a prize. "For a sweet outcome," she said, and smiled wide enough to show a lifetime of certainty. Behind them came a man in a gray jacket with a leather folder under his arm. "Just a friend," my son said when I looked at him. "He knows paperwork. We'll keep it." Simple. They took places like they had rehearsed seating. My son at the head, his wife on his right, her parents on the couch, the friend near the armrest with his folder open already. No one commented on the house, on the pictures on the wall, on the shawl folded over the back of a chair like a sleeping cat. They weren't here to see. They were here to stage. "We'll talk first, eat after," my son said, and tapped the leather folder with 2 fingers the way he had tapped the bank counter. He looked around for a sign that I might argue. I did not. I sat where I always sit, the chair that leans a little because I lean a little. I placed my cane against the table and folded my hands. "Talk," I said. He nodded to the friend, who produced 3 papers clipped together. The paper had that fresh smell of something that thinks it can start a new life because the ink on it is new. "Just standard," my son said. "A letter of direction to the bank, an authorization for the villa's management, and a simple nomination for investment accounts. Housekeeping." The friend smiled and slid the papers toward me, a pen already clipped on top, ready to leap. I didn't pick them up. I looked at my son's wife instead. She was watching me like people watch a cooking pot, waiting for the boil so they can lower the flame and pretend they always had it under control. "Tea?" I asked. Her mother laughed. "We have tea at our place," she said. Here we'll do signatures. Later, we celebrate. I lifted the top paper and read the first line. It was a letter to the bank manager authorizing immediate consolidation and transfer of all accounts and assets currently held in the name of me to the care and management of my son, with me, retaining nominal oversight. Nominal is a soft word that hides sharp teeth. The second page handed access to the villa for maintenance and renovation decisions, and the third was a nomination form written in sunny language about family stewardship. I set them down, I uncapped the pen, my son leaned forward. He always leans into winning. Good, he said. We're being practical. It's better for you. Less stress. I'll manage everything. He reached for the lemon halves absent-mindedly and squeezed one into his water. His face didn't change at the sourness this time. He didn't taste it. He was watching my hand I didn't sign. I clicked the pen closed. The sound was small and clean. No changes, I said. Not today. Her father shifted. He is a man who has bought and sold many things and believes nothing can say no to a price. Buy, he said, brother as a rope to pull me closer. We are doing what is done. Children take care, elders rest. Everyone knows. I nodded. Yes, I said. Children take care. Elders rest. But care is not a transfer slip. Care is making tea when I wake coughing. Care is knowing where I put my glasses. Care is answering. The phone when the clinic calls and not letting it ring until the last chime. Care is not this. I tapped the paper with one finger. The sound was softer than the pen click, but it traveled anyway. My son rolled his shoulders. He had prepared for stubborn, but he hadn't prepared for simple words. This is just formal, he said. You're making it dramatic. You were confused at the bank. You embarrassed me. He glanced at his in-laws, then back at me. Let's fix the impression. I lifted my glass and drank water that tasted faintly of lemon from where his fingers had touched the rim. At the bank, I said, the manager asked for the secondary password. The friend's pen paused. My son's wife glanced at the friend, quick and small, and then down at her ring. And, my son asked, too loud. And I answered, I said, because I am the man who knows the words that keep this house standing. He tried to smile and failed. Anyone can forget a password, he said, turning to his in-laws for support. They nodded as if they had rehearsed forgetting. That's why we're doing this, so we don't need passwords. The bank listens to paper. I set the cap end of the pen to the table and spun it once. The bank listens to the account holder, I said, and they updated my verifications today. Any attempt to move anything needs my voice and my face. The friend spoke for the first time, polite. We can still file that letter, he said. Get a note on file. It helps. It helps who? I asked. He smiled again without showing teeth. Everyone. I stood, slow enough to show I wasn't angry, and fast enough to show I was finished sitting for nonsense. I went to the kitchen and returned with the thin strip of paper the manager had printed, folded once, warm when I tucked it earlier, cool now. I laid it on the table and tapped the date 2 weeks ago. This is the safe deposit access log, I said. Someone tried when I was not there. My son's wife's mother inhaled, a small bird sound. The friend shifted his folder on his lap. My son looked at the line and then at the lemon halves, like he might squeeze another to rewrite time. We were checking, he said, for surprises, for liabilities. He spoke like a man who thinks the word liability can hide the word greed. The surprise, I said, is that you did not know the box refuses strange hands. The liability is yours. There are moments in a room when the air changes sides. This was one of them. He sat back, and some of the evening fell out of him. He tried to gather it with talk. You promised me, he said. You said all this was for me. I looked at him and saw a boy with a bleeding knee and a man with a full beard standing in the same place, confused at the same thing. I promised to raise you, I said. I promised to teach you how to keep what you earn and respect what you don't. I did not promise to be robbed politely. His father-in-law started to stand and then sat again, realizing the room was not his to stand in. My son's wife looked from face to face and then found a spot on the rug to stare at, a small pattern that would not look back. The friend cleared his throat. We can do this later, he said. Perhaps when tempers are cooler. I am not hot, I said. I am clear. I slid the papers back toward him with 2 fingers. You will take these with you. You will not bring them back. My son's jaw moved like a man grinding seeds against a stone. "You can't stop this," he said. "Law is law." He liked that sentence. It sounded heavy when he threw it. I let a small smile come and go. "Law is law," I agreed. "And the law says the account holder speaks for himself until he cannot. I am speaking." He looked for another route. He always does. "Then the house," he said. "Let's not fight about everything. Just give me the villa to manage. I'll fix the roof, the pipes, the wiring. It needs work. You won't see the bills? We'll do it as a gift." His wife brightened at the word gift like a light, with a weak connection suddenly catching. "Yes," she said. "A gift. We want to help you." I walked to the sideboard and opened the second drawer. The sound of wood on wood was a friendly sound. I took out a small cloth bag tied at the top. Inside were keys. Old ones, new ones, a memory of doors. I placed it on the table. "Duplicate sets," I said. "Made without asking. Return them." He looked at the bag like it had teeth. "We didn't," he began, and then stopped because lying in a house with your mother's picture on the wall gives a different taste to the tongue. He reached out and drew the bag to his side, then pushed it back, then pulled it again, undecided even in his hands. "You think I don't see," I said. "But this house has eyes. The maid tells me when a drawer smells of new metal. The gardener tells me when a car stops outside for 5 minutes every afternoon. The watchman tells me who asks about the gate." I wasn't scolding. I was drawing a map and setting him on it. "If you want to manage something," I said, "manage your own hunger." He flinched. He hates the word hunger when it is not about dinner. He likes to call it drive. He likes to call it vision. I sipped my water and let the lemon touch my tongue. Sour, yes, but clean. Her father found words. "You're being cruel," he said, and used the old trick of wiping his eyes without crying. "He is your only son." "I know," I said. "I was there when he arrived." I turned to my son. "You are my only son. That is a crown and a weight. If you cannot carry it without stealing, it will break your neck." He laughed a small laugh that sounded like it had lost its way. "You talk like a saint," he said, "but you love money." "I love the roof that kept you dry," I said. "I love the fees that paid for your classes. I love the hospital bills that bought your mother a few more months. Money is not a god in this house. It is a servant. It works for us, not the other way." The friend closed his folder quietly. He had seen enough rooms to know when paper is useless. He stood, murmured a polite apology for the hour, and moved toward the door. My son looked at him and then back at me, choosing to stay because pride cannot leave before it wins, and pride almost never wins. "Are you going to throw me out?" he asked, louder now, trying to reach the neighbors with his question. "Make me look like a bad son?" I shook my head. "You make yourself," I said. "Every day, with every word, with every hand that reaches for what it did not earn." I walked to the shelf and lifted a photograph. It was the three of us on a winter morning, breath fogging, my wife's scarf thrown around all our shoulders at once, because she said we should be a single creature when it was cold. I held it up so he could see. "She asked me to save for you," I said. "I did. She did not ask me to make you cruel. I will not do that." He stood so fast the glass on the table trembled. "Enough," he said. "We're done pretending. Sign, or I'll change the locks while you sleep." His wife gasped, a sound of surprise even to herself. Her mother touched her arm to quiet her. I looked at my son the way mountains look at storms, aware they can make noise, certain they cannot move stone. "Sit," I said, not loudly, just as if the chair had not heard his command and was waiting for mine. He sat. He did not mean to. He only listened to old habits. He has been taught to sit when I say sit. He forgot that right up until he sat. That is the thing about roots. They hold even when branches behave like they don't know the tree. My phone vibrated on the table, the bank's number. I put it on speaker and answered. "Good evening, sir," the manager's careful voice said. "Apologies for the hour. We wanted to confirm the verification update processed successfully and remind you that any third-party instructions on your accounts will be held until we receive your verbal approval, as recorded, along with live identification." His voice filled the room the way a verdict does. "Thank you," I said. "Please note, we will also maintain the current safe deposit access, only mine." "Confirmed," he said. "Have a restful evening." I ended the call. No one spoke for a moment. A car passed outside, the tire hiss trailing off like a question with a known answer. "Do you bring your bank manager to dinner often?" my son said finally, trying for humor and choking on it. "He brought himself," I said. "Good service." I pushed the lemon halves toward him. "Squeeze," I said. "Maybe you'll taste something tonight." He didn't touch them. He placed both palms flat on the table the way he had at the bank. "What do you want?" he asked. "Name it. A new deal, a share, a timeline. Tell me the price." I looked at his wife. She had gone very quiet, a woman listening to the inside of her own skull. "I want you to learn the difference between asking and taking," I said. "I want you to understand that trust is not a signature, it is a history. I want you to eat the food someone made for you and say thank you without thinking what you can sell the plate for." He stood again, but slower. He managed a smile for his in-laws that said this was under control. "It's okay," he told them, while looking only at me. "He needs time. We'll come back tomorrow." "You will not come back tomorrow," I said. "Tomorrow is mine." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I will be busy," I said, "with my own life." He laughed for real this time, because he thinks old men's lives are small and can be moved like furniture. "Doing what?" he asked. "Changing the story," I said, and it made his eyes narrow because he knows I don't use big words without a drawer to put them in. They left without touching the food. The box of sweets sat on the table like an apology from someone who doesn't know the words. At the door, his wife turned and said, almost to herself, "We just wanted to make it easy." "Easy is often wrong," I said. "Hard keeps you honest." She nodded once, the way people nod when they agree with a thing they cannot say yes to out loud. Her mother pulled her along with a practiced hand. Her father didn't look back. My son lingered, tried to meet my eyes, failed, and then said from the corridor, "You think I'm afraid to fight you?" "I think you're afraid to lose to yourself," I said, "and you already are." When the gate clicked, the house exhaled. I washed the rice and ate standing, the spoon clinking against the plate in a rhythm that has fed more victories than any speech. I put the lemon halves in the small bowl for compost, and their smell was clean and sharp and honest. I washed the 2 glasses and set them upside down to dry, water sliding away in thin shoulders. I took the safe key from where I keep it, inside the spine of a book with a broken back, and held it in my palm. The metal was cool, like river stones. I did not open the safe, not yet. I walked to the veranda and sat with the night. The city's noise came and went like waves. A cat crossed the neighbor's wall with the easy balance of someone who knows edges. I thought of my wife's last winter. The shawl she wore had a thread coming loose near the fringe, and I teased her by pulling it a little, and she slapped my hand, laughing, and said, "Some things unravel from a single tug." She wasn't talking about shawls. I had pulled that thread today, at the bank, at the table. The unraveling had begun, but not of my life. Of the cheap fabric my son had wrapped around himself and called power. It would fall, and beneath it would be a man who could still learn if he decided to be brave the right way. Glory is loud when you steal it. Dignity is quiet when you earn it. I wanted him to choose the second. Wanting is not the same as giving. I had given enough. My phone blinked with a message. "We'll be there at 9 tomorrow," it said, "with our lawyer." I turned off the screen and put the phone face down. He thinks the next round will happen in front of someone who can turn my life into clauses. He doesn't know the ground has already shifted beneath him. That a question asked at a bank is a lever that can move a world if you set it under the right stone. He doesn't know about the papers that don't live in banks, about the signatures that are older than his pride, about the sentence I recorded today that is worth more than any stamp. I stood and locked the door, then checked the window latches in the habit of men who have lived long and learned that safety is a string of small yeses. At my bedside, I touched the frame that holds our wedding picture. I could almost smell the jasmine from that night, the way it soaked the air and made promises seem like facts. I whispered, out loud, because some prayers need air, "I am holding the line." I imagined her nod. I imagined her saying, "Be kind, be firm." I have learned that kindness without firmness is how you teach a thief to smile while he takes, and firmness without kindness is how you become a guard in your own house. I will be both. Sleep took me like a careful friend and returned me before dawn. I woke with the sense of hands knocking, even before I heard the sound. It wasn't the door, it was the world demanding its due. I made tea the way I like it, strong and a little bitter, because sweet is for people who have not yet tasted truth. I carried the cup to my desk and placed the safe key beside it. The sun had not decided to be morning yet. The birds negotiated. In that half-light I saw clearly the path ahead. He would arrive with a hired voice to say his words with better grammar. He would bring documents that wore suits. He would call urgent what was only eager. And I would open the safe, not to take money out, but to take out something older than his plan. Something I had built quietly, document by document, year by year. Not to surprise him, but to save him from the version of himself that thinks winning is taking. But that is for the moment when doors open again. For now, I finished my tea and let the handle of the cup warm my palm. I looked at the key and did not reach for it. I looked at the door and did not fear it. I looked at the table where papers had tried to pretend they were love, and I smiled at the clean wood shining in the early light. Some nights end with noise. This one ended with a soft promise I made to myself. No shouting, no running, no show. Only a flat voice, a slow smile, and a plan that has already been living in the quiet for years, waiting its turn to speak. He thought the bank was the stage. He thought tonight was the encore. He hasn't seen the real performance yet. I woke before the sun, and the house was a quiet drum. I boiled water, watched steam rise like a small ghost, and let my tea sit until the color was right. Then I took the safe key from the spine of the old book and stood in front of the cupboard. For a moment I only rested my palm on the wood. It felt warm, as if the house itself had a pulse. The lock turned with that honest metal sound, and inside, on the top shelf, sat the envelope my wife sealed, the week before the hospital, said words we pretended not to understand. Her handwriting on the front was neat, patient. For when he forgets himself. She had meant our son. She had known the shape of this morning long before it was built. Under the envelope lay a brown file with stiff corners, a blue ribbon, 2 notarized stamps pressed like small suns in the corner. I lifted both with 2 hands, the way you carry a sleeping child. I set everything on the table and washed my hands the way my mother taught me before touching anything important. I opened the envelope first. Inside, a single page in her hand, and my name at the top, the way she used to say it when she had already forgiven me before I made the mistake. If he ever becomes louder than his love, she had written, remind him we did not raise him to collect, but to keep safe. Be kind, be firm, and do not let him take from the future to pay for his pride. I read it twice, then folded it back along the old crease and slid it into my shirt pocket, close to the coal that keeps me steady. Then I untied the ribbon on the file. Inside, the trust deed we had made the year the cough first stole her night. The one with the bank as corporate co-trustee, my name as managing trustee, and a clause that always felt like lightning in a bottle, our home and primary accounts held for the Amina Scholarship Trust, her name was Amina, with my life use carved in stone. After me, not to my son straight away, but to the trust's work first. College fees for children who had all the brains and none of the money. Then, when the trust had reached its number, the remainder to him. If he met the conduct clause she made me write despite the way my pride winced. The conduct clause was clear in her hand and in the lawyer's stamp. No beneficiary may coerce, threaten, or unduly influence the trustees. Any attempt shall suspend distributions for 5 years. She had signed with a steady hand. I had signed with a shaky one. I ran my thumb over the ink as if I could feel her there. By 8:15 I was dressed. I ate half a paratha and left the rest under a napkin for later. The streets were yawning awake as I reached the bank. The guard nodded, surprised to see me before the doors were fully unlocked. The manager, the tie the color of wet steel, opened his office and waved me in, with a quiet respect that doesn't need noise. "We can give you the locker at once," he said, "and we have the notary in by 9. I placed the file on his desk. He did not try to touch it quickly. He read the first page, the clause with his institution's name. A small line appeared on his forehead, the way it does when something clicks into place. "This simplifies many things," he said, and I heard the word simplifies in the way a carpenter says, level. We went to the locker, a little room that always smells like keys and old perfume. I checked the inventory, touched the other papers I keep, insurance, the original deed, my wife's small gold that she didn't sell even when fees were laughing at us. I took what I needed, returned what I did not. Back in his office, we sat in the verification booth again and recorded 2 instructions: a standing freeze on third-party requests without my voice line, and a note on file that any letter of direction must be countersigned by the bank's co-trustee office under the trust deed of 2019. The manager's pen wrote with that steady noise. "We will annotate all accounts and the safe record," he said. "And, sir, the log from 2 weeks ago. Would you like that included in the internal file?" "Yes," I said. "Some stories need their first chapter on paper." At 8:55, the receptionist murmured that my son had arrived with company. I thanked her. We did not change chairs. I wanted him to see me where he expected to find power he didn't respect. He entered with a lawyer who had perfect hair and eyes that had practiced sympathy in a mirror. His wife came too, her mouth pressed into courage, and behind them, her parents seconds slower, riding on the belief that 4 is stronger than 1. My son didn't greet me. He greeted the room. "We have a 9 o'clock, he said. "Urgent matter." The manager stood, nodded, and gestured to the chairs. They sat as if they owned them. Ownership is a habit that creeps into posture. "We'll make this efficient," the lawyer began, unsnapping a leather folder like a man opening a small stage. "We have a letter of direction for consolidation and transfer, a fresh nomination, and an access addendum for the safe deposit." He slid papers across the desk toward the manager, not toward me. "You'll find all in order." The manager did not touch them. He folded his hands and said almost gently, "Before we entertain anything, we need the account holder's verbal consent." The lawyer's smile widened, rehearsed. "Of course," he said, turning to my son. "Let's have him confirm." My son's gaze skated over me like a stone over water. "He approves," he said. "He told me himself." The manager looked at me, not asleep, not unkind. "Sir?" My voice didn't need to rise. It had a seat already. "No transfer today," I said. The lawyer opened his mouth for the performance he had practiced in the car. The manager lifted one hand, the way a conductor does when he wants the brass to wait. "And the secondary password, please," he said to me, not to anyone else. I said the sentence I had chosen, the one you cannot repeat without the life that made it. We saved so he could stand, not so he could climb onto our shoulders. The system accepted it with a soft tone. The lawyer blinked. People forget machines can bless truth too. "Right," the lawyer said quickly, trying to build a bridge over a river with one plank. "So, with respect, our instruction doesn't require immediate movement, merely delegated control for efficiency." He used words like, "They were towels to dry off what had just happened." The manager did not move toward the towel. "The accounts are co-administered under a trust," he said, as if teaching a small class of very smart children. "Any delegation must be countersigned by our trust office, and the trustee has just declined." He turned the file slightly so the lawyer could see the stamp on the first page. The lawyer adjusted his tie. His eyes did a small math. "Co-trustee?" he repeated slower. My son sat back, and some of the room slipped out of him. "What trust?" my son asked, laughter searching his throat and finding nothing to hold on to. "Our family doesn't do trusts." I looked at him with the face I learned from the mountain. "Your mother did," I said. The word mother built a wall you should not kick if you want to keep your foot. He tried anyway. "You mean you did this behind my back?" he snapped. "You hid it. We made it in front of your future," I said, "where you could not yet stand in the way." His wife's eyes glistened like something cutting through ice beneath. Her mother shifted forward. "This is immoral," she said, "to trap a son, to starve blood." "No one is hungry here," I said, "except for things that are not food." The manager spoke into the brief silence with the careful voice of a man who wears rules like a good coat. "Under the deed, sir, is the managing trustee. Our institution is co-trustee. Distributions follow a schedule for specific purposes. And there is a conduct clause." He didn't turn the page toward my son. He turned it toward me, and I nodded, and he continued. "Any coercion or undue influence results in suspension of all discretionary distributions for 5 years. Attempts to access the safe deposit without authorization are recorded." The lawyer reached for his folder, like his hand could hide inside it. "This is unusual," he said. The manager smiled a neat smile. "It is precise." My son leaned forward, palms on his knees like a forward about to sprint. "So I get nothing?" he said, making the word nothing an open mouth. You're cutting me out? You get what your mother wrote for you, I said. Education for those who need it first. Then, when you have learned how to be gentle with what is not yours, what remains? Until then, you get respect if you ask correctly. If you take, you get time. Time out. 5 years. He laughed because the old child inside him heard the phrase time out and felt mocked. You can't do this, he said, voice climbing ladders he could not see were painted on a wall. It's my inheritance. It is your mother's work, I said. Your name is written there, yes. But right after the names of children who never met the man they will become if someone pays their first term's fees. The lawyer tried to sound reasonable. We can challenge the conduct clause, he said softly to my son, softly enough that he thought I wouldn't catch the words. It's vague. The manager glanced at him the way a doctor looks at a patient who insists the fever is a rumor. We wrote it, he said. It is not vague here. He tapped the line that said exactly what coerce, threaten, unduly influence looked like on paper. And then he turned his eyes to the camera in the corner, and then to the printout on his desk, and then to my son's face. The room did not move, but something in it leaned away from my son, just a fraction, enough to make balance work differently. My son looked at me as if I had stolen a sunrise from his calendar. You made me beg for what is already mine, he said, voice low now. You made me look small. You made yourself, I said. You came to a bank to shout and to a dinner to threaten. You arrived today with a hired voice. Small is not a size you are. It is a size you choose. He pressed his tongue to his teeth and breathed hard through his nose the way he used to before he broke his own toys. Then give me the house, he said. At least that. The house is where your mother still breathes in the curtains, I said. It has been placed where she asked. I live there. After me, it works before it gives. That is the order. He laughed without sound. So you'll die, and then I'll get what's left, if I've behaved, he said, rough and ugly. That's your plan? I looked at the manager's tie, and then at my son's hands. My plan is that you live and learn to hold a thing without tearing it, I said. If you do not, my plan still holds. The lawyer saw the door no longer led anywhere. He closed his folder in surrender. We'll review, he said, standing. That is a lawyer's way of saying we have reached the end of the map. My son didn't stand. He had not learned yet that leaving is a form of respect. He leaned back and threw his arm over the chair like it was a horse he had tamed. You think this scares me? He said. You think I can't wait 5 years? He looked at his wife, asking her to nod because love, in his mind, was an echo. She nodded. We'll build our own, she said, brave and thin. Her mother squeezed her hand and glared at me as if glares are glue that can hold a plan together. 5 years is a blink, her father added, his voice full of coins. We will do better outside this cage. I stood, slow because speed wastes good words. Good, I said. Building. That is all I ever wanted. Build on your own ground, lay bricks with your own hands, make mistakes you can afford, and when you are tired, come eat at my table without needing to sign for the plate. The manager, who had been a witness to rooms like this for many years, cleared his throat. Before you go, he said to my son gently, we need you to sign this note that you were informed today about the trust provisions and the updated verification. Standard, he slid a form across the desk. My son stared. He had never signed anything that did not give him something. He took the pen anyway because pride does not like the way refusing can look. He scrawled his name as if writing could scratch the day. The signature looked like a man running downhill. They filed out in a silence that buzzed. In the doorway my son turned. You made me the villain, he said, in front of strangers. You brought an audience, I said. I only brought the truth. His eyes shone wet in a way he would never admit. He left before the water could decide to fall. The lawyer murmured a goodbye to the room, not to me. The manager waited until the door closed and then sat down like a man putting a heavy toolbox back on the ground. Sir, he said, we will circulate the note to our teams. Thank you, I said. There is one more thing. He looked up. The safe deposit, I said. I'd like to place something new. We went back to the locker room. I took the letter my wife had written and placed a copy inside the file. Then I added a smaller envelope addressed to my son. On it, I wrote in my own hand, for when you are ready to be happy. Inside, I put a photograph of him at 7, his sandwich half-eaten, his cheeks full of jam, his eyes too big for his face because joy makes eyes greedy. I added the page of the trust where his name appeared beside the scholarships, not under them, and a note, "Work is not punishment. It is the way out of smallness." I sealed it. The lock clicked shut with that same reliable honesty. The manager stood beside me, not close, not far. "There is a quiet way to win," he said, almost to himself. "There is only the quiet way to win," I said. "Noise is for parades after the work is done." Outside, heat had already begun to press on the pavement. I walked slow and let my feet measure the world. At the curb, my son's car idled. He waited with the window down, alone now. He had sent them ahead, or they had left him to it. I did not know. He looked at me, jaw tight, eyes red at the edges like a man who has swallowed fire and is surprised it burns. "Why did you do it like this?" he asked. No lawyer voice now, no stage, just the boy who threw beans across the table when he lost count. "Because I love you," I said. He snorted, but the sound broke in the middle. "Love doesn't lock doors," he said. "Love keeps doors from being stolen," I said. "Love builds a house that will still be standing when the weather changes." He gripped the wheel. "You think I won't change the weather?" he said. "You think I won't become the storm?" I leaned on my cane and let the sun find my face. "Storms pass," I said. "Houses stay." He stared at the dashboard, then at his hands, then up at the sky, as if God might come down and take a side. "She's gone," he said suddenly, raw. "So why does she still get to decide?" I felt the coal behind my ribs glow without growing. "Because she decided with me," I said, "and because death does not remove wisdom from a house. It leaves it in the cupboards and the curtains and the papers you tried to sign last night. She did not tie you. She kept you from walking off a roof she knew you would not see in time." He laughed once, a small sound like a nail finding wood. "You always talk in pictures," he said. "Maybe I needed numbers." "I gave you both," I said. "You learned pictures, learn numbers now." He put the car in gear and then, as if changing his mind could change the road, put it back in park. "I tried the locker because I was scared," he said, voice so small the street almost kept it. "I thought you had nothing planned. I thought if I didn't grab, we would fall." I looked at him the way you look at a man who admits he doesn't know how to swim and has just come out of the river. "We did fall," I said softly. "When you forgot the difference between asking and taking. But we can climb." He shook his head. Pride came back like a tide. "You've tied my hands," he said. "No," I said. "I've tied the door. Your hands are free." He drove off then, hard and too fast, tires writing anger onto hot tar. I walked home, slow, the way a man who knows where he's going moves. At the gate, the watchman rose from his stool. "All okay, Sahib?" he asked. "All according to plan," I said, and surprised myself by how true it felt. In the living room, the light fell across the floor in long rectangles like pages. I sat where I sit and listened to the house breathe. The phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number, the lawyer. "We will send proposals," it said. "We trust an amicable arrangement is possible." I put the phone face down. Amicable is paper's favorite word. It hates kitchens. It never eats. I made dal and let it simmer until the smell was a memory and a promise. I ate at the table, alone and not alone, because houses keep company if you know how to listen. After lunch, I pulled out a clean sheet of paper and a pen that doesn't scratch. I wrote a list with small boxes to tick, the way my wife liked her lists. Change secondary phrase on locker, tick. Add notary copy to file, tick. Call trust office to schedule annual review, tick. Update house insurance, tick. Tea at 4. I left that box empty on purpose. Some things you don't need to tick to get right. At 4, the bell rang once, a careful sound. I opened the door to find the boy from the bank, red car boy, standing with his mother. They lived 2 lanes away, I learned from the watchman later. She had followed at a distance this morning and asked at the gate if she could bring me anything from the market. I said tea would be nice, and now she held a small tin of leaves, like a prize she had won by telling the truth. The boy pushed the car toward my shoe and made the soft vroom that never needs an engine. "Thank you," I said, taking the tin. "Join me." She hesitated, then nodded. In the kitchen, she told me her father had died last year, and her brothers had argued about pots and pans like they were titles. Men forget themselves, she said, pouring water. Women remember. We drank without speaking for a while. The tea warmed the places in a chest where a day can make cold. When they left, the house felt bigger in a good way, like a shirt that finally fits after you stop showing off. I stood at the window and watched evening teach the day how to let go. Tomorrow will come, with whatever men bring to a table when they have a fresh bruise on their pride. There will be one more room, one more set of words, one more place to put the truth down and leave it there. I am ready. Not because I like fighting, not because I like winning, because I like a house that stays standing, a name that is not for sale, and a son who still has a chance to remember he was raised by people who did not steal, even from themselves. Night gathered its dark shawl and drew it over the neighborhood. I locked the door, clicked each window shut, and sat with my back straight and my hands quiet. The coal under my ribs hummed, not angry, just warm. The plan did not need more fire. It needed patience and one last turn of the key at the right time, in the right room, with the right words. He thinks today was the end. It was the turn. The end comes softly, like truth finally taking its chair while noise runs out of breath. Tomorrow, I will hand him the mirror he has been running from. I will not lift it high. I will hold it at his height. And when he sees himself there, not as a villain, but as a man who can step back from a cliff, maybe then the house will be a home again, one room at a time. By evening, the heat had softened, and the city wore that tired light that makes even noisy streets speak in a hush. I brewed tea and let it sit, black and steady. The gate bell rang, one long press, no patience. I opened the door to my son and a man with a canvas tool bag whose eyes slid past me toward the lock like a cat looking at a bird. Behind them, my son's wife stood with her arms folded, as if she needed to keep something from falling out of her chest. The watchman looked from the tool bag to my face. I nodded once. He stayed where he was. "We're changing the locks," my son announced, as if a declaration could become a deed if you said it louder. The locksmith started to step forward. I held up my hand, not high, not threatening, just a palm like a small gate. "If you touch that lock," I said to the locksmith, "you will be changing a trustee's door against the trust's deed. You will be responsible for damage to trust property." I didn't hand him paper. I showed him the blue ribbon file for a breath and closed it again. His eyes found the stamp without meaning to. Men who work with metal know when a door belongs to someone who knows what a door is for. He backed away 2 steps, murmured something about another job, and retreated, leaving the bag to swing and knock his own knee. My son exhaled through his teeth. "Coward," he said at the man's back. "No," I said. "Careful." He pushed past me and walked into the living room like someone searching for a misplaced applause. I let him. My house has seen joy in hospital nights and exam mornings. It is not afraid of footsteps. "Sit," I said. He sat, angry, because old habits sit even when pride stands. His wife took the edge of the couch and didn't rest her back, a person ready to run. I poured tea. I did not ask if they wanted it. I placed the cups on the table. The lemon halves were there again, yellow and honest. He didn't touch them. "You humiliated me today," he said, starting small and careful. "At the bank, in front of those people." He waited for me to deny it. I didn't. "I told the truth," I said. "Truth sometimes has an audience." He laughed once, empty. "You think this is the end?" he asked, and nodded toward the door where the locksmith had vanished. "There are other ways, other doors." He spread his hands, palms up, as if to show me how empty they were, as if emptiness was proof. "Yes," I said. "There are always other doors. Some lead out, some lead down." He made a sound, something between a scoff and a sigh. "You don't want to be cared for," he said suddenly, as if he had discovered a clever angle. "That's the truth. You like control more than company. You want to be the hero of your own story." I sipped my tea, let the heat press against my tongue. I like water that runs in the pipes, power that stays on, bills that do not become knives, and a roof that doesn't lie. I like a son who understands that care is a verb. I like myself enough to keep all of this from being sold for your pride. His wife looked at him, as if hoping he would find a gentler word. He didn't. "You've tied my life to your sentences," he said. "You made a trust like a trap. You put rules in the walls. No, I said. Your mother put rules in the walls. I only hung the frame where she asked. That name again. It walked into the room and sat down without needing a chair. He stared at the photograph on the shelf. The winter morning, our breath fogging. He speaks her name less now because it makes his mouth soft, and he is afraid softness will be heard as weakness. You always use her, he said. She isn't here to disagree. She is here, I said, in the way we don't leave dishes overnight, in the way we fold the extra blanket, in the way I made tea before I spoke, in the way I wrote the conduct clause. I touched the blue file like it could feel. She read every line and then wrote two of her own. He swung his gaze back to me, new anger trying to outrun the old one. So, this is it, he said. You've locked everything. The trust, the bank, the box. You've turned my inheritance into a lesson plan. He smiled sharp, like a boy showing a broken tooth to make the other children flinch. What do I get? He asked. A lecture, a cup of tea, a father who plays riddles with paperwork. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, the way I used to when he was 7 and had to confess about the broken window. I am going to give you 2 things tonight, I said, a mirror and a map. He laughed, but softer. And a poem? He said, rolling his eyes like it might flip my words. I don't need your pictures. I need what's mine. Look, I said, and held my hand up, counting with fingers, because pictures are how truth sits still long enough to be seen. First, the mirror. You brought a locksmith to your father's gate. You tried a safe when you thought I was out. You arrived at a bank with a lawyer to take what you did not earn. That is not care. That is not love. That is not courage. That is hunger dressed in a suit. See that. Name it correctly. If you can't, the next 5 years will be long. He opened his mouth to deliver the lines he had been carrying around in his pocket, but the words lost weight before they reached his lips. He changed them. Say the second thing, he said. Your map. Good, I said. Second, the map. The trust is a wall if you run into it. It is a road if you climb it. The clause says 5 years of suspension if you coerce. Today, at 9:15, in the manager's office, you crossed that line with papers and a voice you hired because you didn't trust your own. That means the clock can start now. He stood, shoved his hands into his pockets, took them out again. A man trying to hold a fish. So I get nothing, he said, working to keep his voice even. I told you, a trap. You get a job, I said. At the Amina Scholarship Trust, not a title to wear, work for a year, no car allowance, no signatures, a desk, a chair, a list of students who will not go to college if you are lazy. You will call their schools, you will check forms, you will sit on plastic chairs and listen to mothers who work 2 jobs, explain how their boy reads at night by the streetlight, because the electricity bill is a prayer they haven't had answered yet. You will deliver the first, fee in person, and wait while the clerk scowls, and you will not scowl back. You will be paid enough to stand, not enough to show off. At the end of a year, you will come back here and ask again, not to take, to join. If you do not want that map, then yes. The clause starts tonight, and I won't see you for 5 years, except as a name who used to live in my house. His wife made a small sound, a held-in breath. She turned her face toward him, hopeful, fearful. That's beneath me, he said too quickly, like a boy blurring a line. I have plans. Yes, I said. You plan to be carried. I am giving you the plan to walk. He paced once, twice. He stopped and touched the window latch like the locksmith might have, a hand making sure something is closed. He looked at the photograph again. You think a year at a desk makes me good? I think a year of looking at other people's need will make you human again, I said, and that is better than good. We stood inside a silence that had shape. Outside, a bicycle bell rang somewhere, cheerful and simple. He swallowed. You think I can't make my own money? He said, the old defiance half alive and half asleep. You think I can't build without you? I hope you can, I said, and meant it. Build where your name is on the first brick. If you need help, ask. Ask with respect. Ask knowing my help will be a rope, not a helicopter. I will not pick you up anymore. I have knees to protect. He rubbed his eyes with thumb and finger, then made a fist like he wanted the fist to hold the day. And if I refuse? He asked. If I walk out now? I nodded toward the door. Then I will call the bank and ask them to note an incident of undue influence and your 5 years start. And you will walk out with the same hands you walked in with. Empty, but clean if you decide to keep them that way. He laughed again, but the laughter had a short breath. You'd do that to me, he said, as if the words could turn my spine into soft rope. I would do that for you, I said, because my job is not to make you comfortable. It is to make you ready. His wife's hand moved an inch toward his arm and stopped, like she had practiced holding and learned when not to. Take the year, she said in a small voice. His head turned fast, but she did not flinch. Take the year, she repeated. We can live ordinary for 12 months. The word ordinary put a new shape on her mouth. It looked like relief trying to be brave. He stared at her, then at me, then at the lemon halves, like maybe Sour could tell the future. He shook his head, once, twice. I don't know how, he said. And for the first time that day, the truth arrived without a disguise. He sat down again, and his shoulders lowered the way a man lowers a load he wasn't meant to carry. I don't know how to be small, he said. He looked like the boy with the jam on his cheek, older, his skin stretched over the same center. I let myself breathe a little more. Small is not the goal, I said. Steady is. The doorbell rang again. The watchman's voice on the speaker announced the bank manager, unexpected and very calm. I went to the gate. He stood with a sealed envelope. Apologies, he said. We were asked by our trust office to deliver copies of today's annotations to the managing trustee, and he cleared his throat. We thought it prudent to hand you this as well. He gave me a printed notice. Attempted unauthorized access noted on file. Beneficiary informed. Conduct clause explained. I signed for it, thanked him, and asked if he would take tea. He smiled and declined, a man with a home to return to, where no one would ask him to choose between love and rules tonight. When I returned, my son had not moved, but something in him had. He had read the seal with his eyes without standing. I placed the envelope on the table. I placed another, smaller one beside it, the one I had written this morning at the locker, for when you are ready to be happy. He looked at it like it could bite. What is that? A photograph of you with jam on your mouth, I said, and a page that shows your name next to the scholarships, and a single sentence, work is not punishment, it is the way out of smallness. You may open it when you begin at the trust. If you leave tonight to find another locksmith, the envelope goes back to the box. He reached for it and then pulled his hand back, careful, as if happiness might smear if you touched it before it set. You'll stand over me? He asked, softer now, not accusation but fear. I shook my head. I'll stand beside you when you ask. I'll stand aside when you try. I will not stand under you while you climb a ladder made of my bones. He laughed at that, an honest, surprised sound that broke the air in a good way. You still talk in pictures, he said. You still think in money, I said. Between us, we might make a decent man. He rubbed his face. He looked at his wife. She gave him a look I recognized, the look my wife used to give me when I reached for the easy way, and she pushed my hand toward the right way. He nodded once, like a man paying a debt to himself. A year, he said. Then we talk. A year, I said. Then we don't talk about money first. He stood and held out his hand the way boys do when they decide to be men. I took it. His grip was not strong and not weak. It was learning. We did not hug. We didn't need to. He picked up the small envelope and put it in his pocket without looking inside. He left the blue file where it belonged, on my shelf, under her shawl. At the door he hesitated. What if I fail? He asked, not turning. Then you begin again, I said. 5 years is a long time to learn. 1 year is a better time to start. He nodded and stepped out into the evening, where the air carried the smell of someone making onions golden for dinner and the sound of a bus sighing at a stop. His wife smiled at me, with her mouth and her eyes, both. She did not say thank you. She didn't need to. She would say it later to him if he deserved it. When they were gone, the house settled into itself like a person who has been standing too long. I poured the leftover tea into my cup and drank it cold, because sometimes cold is the right way to end a day that burned. I placed the bank's envelope in the drawer with the spare keys and smiled at the emptiness of the canvas bag swinging across a locksmith's leg as he retreated. Some tools are only sharp if the hand holding them knows what to build. I walked to the safe and touched the wood again, not to open, just to keep the promise. In the courtyard, the bougainvillea tossed pink confetti at the wall for no reason other than the evening. The watchman coughed and settled on his stool. Somewhere a child laughed too loud and then corrected himself, learning the evening's rules. I sat and let my wife's letter warm the spot above my heart. It didn't make me sentimental. It made me exact. She had asked me to be kind and firm. I had spent years learning to be both. Kind so that love could hear itself talk. Firm so that love did not become a door everyone felt allowed to steal through. "You would have liked tonight," I said to the room, and the room agreed, the way old rooms do when the people who made them proud are still invited to sit. "If you're still here, tell me where you are reading from. Tell me what the light is like in your room, and which part of this made you remember your own house, your own father, your own son." Stories like this are only worth anything if they help someone put their hand on the right door. If this story moved you, subscribe, like, share, and comment with where you're watching from and what you would have said at the counter. The quiet wins need witnesses. Your voice might help someone choose the steady road.